Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our briefing this afternoon on transatlantic perspectives on shale gas development. Obviously, this is a topic that a lot of people are hearing about and are concerned about, and we welcome the fact that you have all come this afternoon to learn further about this very important issue as we think about what this means for energy policy, what this means for water policy, what this means for land use and future directions as we move forward at the state and federal level in terms of looking at this very important issue. And of course, it's not an issue just here in the United States, across our country, but it's also an important issue internationally, which is why we are co-sponsoring this briefing today with the Heinrich Böll Foundation. And at this time, I would like to turn the microphone over to our co-sponsor, to Klaus Linstermeyer, who is the director of the Washington office of the Heinrich Böll Foundation, to explain a little bit about why they also are very interested in learning more about this important issue. Klaus?
Thank you very much, Carol. Just a word to the Heinrich Böll Foundation. We are a political foundation from Germany, and we are close to the Green Party, so expect us to be pretty biased on these kind of issues. Let me give you a little bit of a background on why we embarked on this issue. If you look at the German, landscape today, on July 8th, the German government is expected to vote on a bill or a set of bills that will gradually phase out nuclear-generated energy in Germany by 2022 and accelerate investments in renewable energies and energy efficiency. These laws are to be seen in continuity of a similar decision already taken 10 years ago. So it's nothing new, nothing unexpected. What we are doing is predominantly broadening the national consensus on the phase-out of nuclear energy. These decisions have triggered critical reactions worldwide, and like Germany, many other countries, predominantly, of course, Japan, are discussing similar strategies or revising their nuclear energy strategy. Indeed, the plans are ambitious. How can one of the world's biggest economy and industrial nations like Germany phase out of a form of energy which makes up to 20-25% of our energy mix? It's quite a lot. So some fear that the CO2 emissions might arise as coal power plants would have to step in to fill the energy gap. This, however, is unlikely because you have to look at another provision that is made in the European carbon market. And this carbon market caps all emissions from power plants. There is an overall cap that doesn't allow an increase in CO2 emissions. What seems certain is that traded emissions rights will become more expensive and will give more incentives to further switch to clean energies. Even with the nuclear phase-out, Germany remains committed to greenhouse gas targets of minus 40% by 2020 and minus 80% by 2050. Experts and policymakers are optimistic that an increase of energy costs will be modest and that Germany will continue to import and export electricity depending on the time and day, as we did it at present, and we did it in the past. But let's make a mistake. This is a pretty bold decision. The country has to boost its energy produced out of renewable resources. Some of the laws in discussion, and that will be decided upon in July the 8th, will deal with that. So far, the country has been pretty successful replacing fossil fuels with renewable at an even faster pace than previously projected. So the overall economy is not suffering, but the phase-out and this kind of policy give incentive for renewable and more efficient technology production and electricity use. As we have an intense debate on how the transformation to a low-carbon economy may be possible, we have to talk about how the future energy mix will evolve. And this, now it comes to the issue of today, that's the point where we have to talk about alternate sources of energy, and of course we have to talk about gas, and as we do today, on shale gas. We are having a debate here in the US about the pros and cons of shale gas. Some states already have gathered a lot of experience in this field, mixed ones, as I know, and more European governments are also looking at this kind of new technology because there are also possibilities of shale gas production all over Europe, and that's why we are interested in this issue. Today's event is part of a visitors program of the Heinrich Böll Foundation, in which we bring experts and members of parliament here to the US to get first-hand information. And this is this discussion is part of this visitors program to learn about the mixed experiences here in the US on shale gas. Both countries debate whether and how fracking should be regulated in order to preserve the economic benefits gained from low natural gas prices and on the same time protect the health and well-being of communities, particularly at the sites of the fracturing, which is a very difficult issue, as many of you know. Before I hand over back to Carol as moderator, I would like to thank Arne Jungjohann, of our Director for Environment, who organized the whole event and the tour, and also Lindsay Parker, who joined us recently and is very much engaged in this program. And of course, Carol, very many thanks to you for co-hosting that with us. It's always a pleasure to join you. Thank you very much, and it's on you.
Thank you, Klaas. At EESI, we've been looking at the issues around shale gas for over the last year, as we've been watching what's been happening in a variety of states, as I said, around the country, actions being taken in some states. Obviously, there have been a number of documentaries, a lot of press attention, and we have also seen numerous bills introduced at state legislatures as well as at the federal level, hearings held. And so we felt that it was important to begin to really look at this as part of our EESI briefing series. And as I said, we're very pleased to be hosting this briefing today with the Heinrich Böll Foundation. So our panelists this afternoon are going to elucidate a number of the issues around shale gas so that we all can learn more about what some of the implications are, what do we know, what are some of the practices underway, what's the significance of geology with regard to what's happening in one part of the country, one part of the world, as opposed to the other, what are all of the issues that should be considered as we think about the role of this important shale gas development, which has really developed very, very quickly over the course of the last few years and has rather exploded on the scene in terms of being recognized as what could be a huge new source of natural gas. And where does that fit into everything? So to start off our panel discussion today, we will first turn to Jean Briskin, who is the leader of the Hydraulic Fracturing Research Task Force at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And I think it's probably, everyone knows, EPA has a multi-year study with regard to shale gas fracturing underway. There are a number of states that also are have embarked upon a number of studies. But we are anxious to hear something more with regard to the EPA study in terms of thinking about the process and the parameters of that important work. Because Jean has to leave early for another meeting, we will take a few questions, if there are some, for her right after her presentation, but then we will take the questions for other panelists after everyone else has concluded their presentation. Jean?
Thank you, Carol, for inviting me to talk with this audience on behalf of EESI and the Heinrich Böll Foundation. Today I'm going to be talking about EPA's research study to look at the potential impacts of hydraulic fracturing on drinking water resources. Hydraulic fracturing has really taken off in the United States as an important tool to get at gas and oil in tight resources such as shale. Horizontal drilling combined with hydraulic fracturing has opened up that resource to be much more widely available than it was before those technologies were combined. So hydraulic fracturing, and in the way that EPA is looking at it, is looking at the entire cycle of water as it is used or interacts with hydraulic fracturing. We're looking at water that needs to be acquired and brought to the site. There it's mixed with chemicals and proppants that's injected at high pressure underground through often a horizontal well, although you can use this in a vertical or directional well. When the pressure, and that injection at high pressure will create the fractures in the target formation. When the pressure is released and the materials come back up to the surface, mixed with the native waters and whatever materials are normally there on the subsurface, that wastewater is then handled in a pit or a tank, and then it's either recycled, treated on-site or treated off-site, before it's ultimately disposed of. At the Environmental Protection Agency, we've heard a variety of concerns expressed by the public. People have noted their concerns regarding ground and surface water contamination, concerns about potential air pollution, ecosystem impacts, seismic impacts, public safety, or occupational risks. Our study is looking just at the potential impacts of hydraulic fracturing on drinking water resources. The reason why is in 2010, the Appropriations Committee of Congress directed EPA to study this relationship. And our study is going to be undertaken using the best available science, independent sources of information. We're going to be taking a transparent approach, and so my talking to you today is part of our effort to let people know what we're doing and how we're doing it. Our study is going to be peer-reviewed, as well as the study plan, which is now available on EPA's website, and we're doing this work in consultation with others. As I mentioned, our purpose is to assess the potential impacts of hydraulic fracturing on drinking water resources, and also to identify any driving factors, if there are resources, that affect the severe frequency of those impacts. And we expect that folks at all places might be able to make use of the information that we're developing at local, state, or federal level. So to develop our study plan, we have engaged stakeholders across the country in a very large process. We started with stakeholders, a series of meetings last summer across the country in 4 different states to ask people what they thought that we should be studying. We also went to our Science Advisory Board last summer and asked them how they thought we could best accomplish our task. They gave us some recommendations, and we put together a draft study plan that became available this winter. They're currently reviewing our study plan, and their full committee is going to meet in July to give us back their final recommendations on how we should scope our research. To pull together our study plan, we also did a literature review. We had internal reviews at EPA, as well as an external federal agency review. So there's a lot of input that we've taken in order to come up with our proposed approach. As I mentioned, we're following the water cycle as it's used in hydraulic fracturing, and what we've done is put together a series of fundamental research questions that we've asked for this peer review input on. So there's a set of questions that go with each step of the water cycle. For example, at water acquisition, how might the large water volumes affect potential water quality? In chemical mixing, if there were to be a spill, are there potential impacts for the releases of those materials on drinking water resources? During the injection process, is there a possible impact during that injection process on drinking water resources? And then so forth for the handling of the flowback and produced water, and then the wastewater treatment and disposal. We also have a series of secondary